Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. My name is Jason. Thank you for being here. If you have not been here before, this is not going to be the typical painfully honest video. Well, it's going to be painfully honest, but not about tech. I don't normally talk about myself, my life, my stuff all that much, and so I figured I'd do a little story time video. But if you're interested, there's a video coming out about this guy that's coming out here in the next couple of days, and there's actually a little teaser for it at the end of this video, so you hang around till then, you'll see that teaser. But video coming out about this. But today I wanted to talk a little bit about myself. I don't really talk about myself all that much, and I wanted to talk about something kind of interesting. So today is the 30th anniversary of when I met my wife. We have been together for 30 years now, and we have been married in September. It will be 25 years. So picture back in, say, 1992, April, toward the end of the semester in the college year. I am a sophomore, sort of, in college. I took a semester off. It's very confusing, but I'm a sophomore, and let me tell you the story of how we met, because if we were to meet this way in the modern day, it would be illegal. I would be a stalker, and maybe worse. But anyway, so I'd been in college for a little while. I grew up in the town that I went to college in, Morgantown, West Virginia. Went to West Virginia University, and I was a musician, always hanging out with the musician people, going to the club. I spent most of my time, if I wasn't going to class and I wasn't home doing schoolwork or out at the club or practicing with the band, I spent a lot of time at the local record store. We had a couple in town, but the one that I hanged out at the most was a store called Wizard Records. It was run by my very good friend Jack, who came up from Athens, Ohio, to run Wizard Records, and so it'd been open for a few years. I'd become very close with the people who ran the store. I would come in, Jack and I would go into the back and have coffee, and he would shrink wrap CDs or whatever it was that he needed to do that day. But usually we would just talk about whatever it is that we would talk about. A little bit of chock full of nuts coffee with, just a tiny bit of sugar, but black as the night is dark. And it was a really good time. And so I was there on a Saturday afternoon, and I was talking to the folks that worked there, and I had, I'd broken up with a girl a while back, and I wasn't really in a relationship, but always looking, as college kids are, and I swear to God, I saw this young lady across the music store. I don't know when she came in. I don't know if she was there when I came in. But I was transfixed. I was just like, and I said to my friend Jack, I was like, Jack, do you know that young lady over there? I have never seen her before. She is incredible. She had dark, dyed black hair, and she was wearing kind of punky, kind of grungy clothes. Now, this was the early '90s. Nirvana was a thing at this point, and so it was becoming more mainstream, but she basically looked like Winona Ryder to me, and Winona Ryder was my big crush ever since I was in early in high school, late in junior high school. I was big in love with Winona Ryder, and this young lady looked like Winona Ryder, and so I was just kind of like, I've lived in this town my whole life. I've hung out in this record store forever. How is it that I do not know who this person is? Because clearly she looked like somebody that I should know. She should be in my friend group on some periphery. I don't know. She should be somewhere, but she wasn't. And Jack was like, I don't know who she is. She comes in every once in a while. She buys a couple of CDs, and then she goes. So I just kind of stood there, kind of leaning this way, and just casually doing the look every once in a while. And she was thumbing through the CDs, and eventually she came up to the counter, and she had two CDs. They were terrible. One was Ned's Atomic Dustbin, which was a terrible British band, and another one was a band similar to that. They were awful. We called that music squish, just because it that seemed like the kind of sound that it made. It was just not very good poppy British guitar, alternative rock. I don't know. It was not good. But that didn't deter me. The music snob that I was, that didn't deter me. I decided to keep going and just like sort of pay attention and sort of stand there, trying to be conspicuous, as conspicuous as I could. But you know how that goes. She paid with a check. Yes, back in the 90s, we still used checks and check books and that kind of thing. And usually in a college town, when you pay with a check, you would have to put your phone number and your address and all, you know, your local address and all that kind of stuff on the check if you were paying with the check, because a lot of college kids would get these checkbooks and then they would just bounce all over the place. So she paid with the check, and I'm standing there kind of trying to be conspicuous and, you know, as cool as I possibly could be. But, you know, I'm not exactly sure how well that was working. So she leaves the store. She leaves the store, and I stand there for a minute, and I'm just like, okay, what do I do here? What do I do here? I decided to follow her. Okay, this is where everything starts to become somewhat sketchy. Okay, but just bear with me. Just bear with me. I decided to follow her. I go out the store. I see her turning the corner up at the end of the next block. So I go up there, and she's gone into the Discount Den, which is just a convenience store for the college kids. Also sold CDs and that sort of thing, and but also, you know, beer and snacks and groceries, that kind of stuff. Anyway, they had 35-cent, like 32-ounce soda pops that you could get from the fountain. Which everybody got. I think they were 35 cents. They might have been 20 cents. They were like the loss leader for that place, and people went in there and got them all the time, and you would see people just like drinking those things all over campus. Anyway, I sort of positioned myself across the street. The geology building was across the street. I was like, I think I just sat on the steps and tried to be cool about things, and I saw her. She came out, and then she went back to the right toward the main street, and so I followed at a decent distance. I wasn't going to be too creepy. Just kind of wanted to get a general sense of, like, if I were to walk around campus and maybe run into this young lady, where would I do that and such. So I followed her up, and I saw that, like, next block up, she took a right and went down that way. And I thought that was weird, because the only thing down that way were sororities and fraternities, and it wasn't really, like, my kind of scene. It was just, that was the no-go zone for my group of friends. Didn't really have much contact with those folks, although we would have over the next couple of years, because everybody wanted, you know, the alternative bands to play their frat parties and that sort of thing. So by the time I get up to that corner and I look, she's gone. And I'm just like, what the heck happened? What the heck? How in the heck did she just disappear? But she did. And I walked up the street. No sign of her. No sign of her. Only sorority houses all up and down the street. So my heart sunk, but I carried on. I carried on, went back to the record store, and I said to my friend Jack, I said, Jack, you know, I know that this is not good business practice. This is a little shady. This is not something that you should do. But I saw that she paid with a check, and I just was wondering, like, could you just tell me, like, let me see the name on the check? I'm not going to do anything but look at the name, not going to take the phone number, nothing like that. Just let me see the name on the check. And Jack, who has always been a very, very honest and forthright person, and not a rule bender by by any stretch of the imagination, thought about it for a second, and then he let me see the name. So I immediately scurried home, and I called information, which is something that you could do back in the day, and I got her phone number. There was only one Teresa Murphy in the phone book, so I got her phone number, and then I didn't know what to do, so I didn't do anything. So next day comes. Jack always came down on Sunday mornings to have coffee and donuts with me. That was a thing that we did. He came down to my apartment. I lived with like 4 other guys in this giant sort of loft, warehousey space that was cold as hell or hot as hell, depending on the weather. But Jack would come down. We'd have coffee. We'd have donuts. We'd listen to some music. We'd talk about stuff. And I was just like, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? Should I talk to this girl? Should I call this girl? I've never done anything like that before. I've never been so forward. That it even at the time it seemed a little creepy, but as I say, these days I would probably be arrested instead of getting any kind of date. But finally, Jack was like, just call, and all you have to do is say, hey, I saw you at the record store, and I was wondering if you want to go get a coffee or whatever. And so finally, I worked up the nerve. I got on the phone, and no cell phones then. I got on the phone, dialed the number. Somebody picked up, and I said, hey, is Teresa there? And the person on the other end said, no, but Teresa is here. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, you don't know me, but I saw you yesterday at the record store, and I just happened to see your name on your check as you paid, and I got your number from information. And I was just wondering if you would want to go out and have a cup of coffee or a lunch or some kind of snack or something at some point. And she was like, oh, which one were you? I was somewhat taken aback, but I was like, oh, I was standing to the left of the counter, and it was just me on the left side, sort of facing the counter as you paid. And she was like, oh, well, I have a boyfriend. Thank you very much for calling, and click. That was it. So of course I'm just crushed. I don't know what to do about this. It's a terrible situation. So this is back in like the late winter, early spring, right? So I do from that point on start walking up that street to go to classes, the classes that I had on that campus, and I passed her several times as I walked, but I never figured out where it was that she lived. I passed her several times, never figured out where it was that she lived, but I was sort of like, in the right vicinity. And then one time my band was playing a show at the club where we always played. It was a big sort of benefit show, I think, and there were a lot of bands were playing. And so I saw that she was there with friends. She was there with some friends, and she was, I was like, this is going to be it. I'm in, because guys in bands are cool. She will see that I'm cool, and I will have an opening at some point to go talk to her. And as my band gets on stage and we go into our first song, I'm looking toward the back of the club. I see her and her friends walking up. So again, heart sinks. Still don't know who this girl is, other than her name. And so I just, keep seeing her around until spring. And spring comes, and I'm just like, when spring springs, you want to go out, you want to do your things. It's a Friday night. A Friday night was always reggae night at the club where I always hung out, and it was the first really nice day of spring, and this band Rasta Rafiki, which was the local band, they were playing, and I knew those guys. And then Rusted Root, who went on to become famous with that Om Away song, Om Away, Om Away. That song on Ice Age, that was their like big hit. But they were from Pittsburgh, and they always came down, and they always brought a big crowd. So I went down, and I was just sitting there, and boom, there she is, the girl. She is there. She's with a few friends. She's with two girls and a guy. And the guy is like Adonis, like Chris Hemsworth, like blonde surfer, good-looking dude. And I'm like, oh, great, this is the boyfriend, and I am screwed because I don't look anything like that. I don't look anything like that whatsoever. So I'm somewhat dejected, but I'm not deterred. As the evening starts out, the bands start playing. The club where I went to is called 123 Pleasant Street now. It's been called a bunch of different things over the years. It's still there all these years later. It's the club that I started going to when I was like 15 years old. They had an all-ages place that was one of the first clubs maybe the first club show I ever played in a band. If you want to know that story, I'll tell you that story. Just let me know down in the comments. Anyway, she's there. And I decide, okay, I'm going to grab a beer, and there are these ledges with like fireplaces because the floor had actually been like there was like a crawl space underneath the original first floor, but they had taken out that original first floor to make it big and lofted. So there were these ledges that sort of ran along like a hearth kind of ledge with a couple of fireplaces in it, but the fireplaces didn't work. So I positioned myself on one of those ledges about 3 or 4 feet away, and just kind of sat there and she and her friends were close by, and they kind of got a little bit closer, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is going well. I'm excited about this. And at one point, she like kind of bumps into me and looks at me, and I look at her, but nobody says anything. And then, you know, the first band is over, and then the headliners are coming on, and when I come back, I'm sort of standing behind her, and just like in a creepy way. Okay, it might have been creepy then. It definitely would be creepy now. But I was standing there, and she turned around. She bumped into me, and when I was sitting on the ledge, she bumped into me, and I bumped my legs into her, and I was just like, I'm sorry, I'm not bumping into you too much. Like we just sort of passed a brief moment where she was like shaking her head. Then she used the same line back on me, and all of a sudden, like, it was on. The conversation was on, and we were talking. We just started talking, and she like, you ever get that feeling that just like, I got it right now. It's like it's in your chest, it's in your stomach, and it's sort of just like fluttering. So had that feeling. And we talked for the rest of the evening. We kind of like forgot about the music and everything else. The guy that was with her was actually the brother of one of her friends, who is dating her other friend. He's actually one of my really good friends. His name's Christian Stevenson. He does his own DJ barbecue. He does his own thing over in the UK with that. So at the end of the night, I decide to very nicely walk her home, and I find that she does in fact live in a sorority house. She's in the Kappa Kappa Gamma sorority. I've never known anybody that's in a sorority. I was a townie. We didn't mix well with we didn't mix with the sorority fraternity types. So I had never really met anybody in a sorority before. So talked. She went inside, and we made plans to have our first official date the next day. The next day, we had our first official date. She still had the boyfriend. He was back in her hometown. She still had the boyfriend, but we decided to have our first official date the next day. And this is where it gets creepy. Well, maybe not creepy. Okay, so my favorite place to take a date back in the day was the local paupers cemetery. Now, if you don't know what a pauper cemetery is, it's like, you know, the indigent people who like die and aren't claimed, or you know, homeless people or something like that, or people who can't afford to be buried in a for-profit cemetery. There's always like this place that's sort of out, usually in some piece of land, not very public, where they bury these people. And it was just a field of white wooden crosses made out of 2x4s that were like, you know, that were made into crosses. And so I like to take people there. It was very quiet. It was very serene. And then near the pauper cemetery, there was this monastery that had been around for a long time, and they had woods behind the monastery, and it was just like a big sort of, it was castle-like monastery, and you could walk around that, and it was very pretty. And then down in the woods below, they had what they called the Bible Walk. And the Bible Walk had mannequins dressed in biblical scenes. So you could walk and see like Moses and, you know, the nativity scene and all these other things, you know, like, you know, John the Baptist, blah, blah, blah. Also very creepy because, you know, if you leave mannequins out in the weather, the weather kind of melts the mannequins. So I'm going to try and throw some images up here so you can see that. But at any rate, that was our first date. And I knew that if that date went well, then everything was going to be good. And it did. It really did. Like, it's hard to remember back 30 years, but there's not been a day ever since that day that I haven't talked to her. We lived together for most of the next school year. She went back to her hometown for the summer, and I went and visited her, and she broke up with the boyfriend and all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, she had her own apartment, but we pretty much lived together that next year. And the year after that, we moved to New York City together. We stayed in New York City for 11 years. We moved back to West Virginia for a year or so, and then we came out here to Iowa, where we've been for the past 17 years. And like I say, we got married in 1997. having spending your life, sharing your life with someone, and having it be like a true total partnership. It's not, there of course is like, head over heels, love time, and then there's been hard times, and then I've been fired from many jobs over the years. I have not been an easy person to live with for many reasons, and to this day I'm still shocked that she would choose to stay with me, but she has chosen to stay with me, and I'm grateful for that every single day. I know that my parents divorced when I was 8. My daughter's 18 now. And we're now raising our grandson, and not my daughter's, my son's son. Not my daughter's just finishing high school. She doesn't have a baby, but we're raising our grandson. We're moving into. I just turned 50. It's a crazy life, people. You really never know what's going to happen. But the day that I saw her in that record store, I said to my friend Jack after I came back and sort of started to calm down, I said to him, that's the girl I'm going to marry. And of course it was a joke, but it turned out to be the truth. And 30 years later, I have been a very fortunate person. I wouldn't be here doing this right now without her. I wouldn't have made it this far. I would be long gone from this earth if I didn't have her strong, sort of steady hand with me all this time. So I wanted to share this story with you just because it's a story that I love, and it's the kind of story that I think people like to hear, or I like to tell it. And so hopefully it's been fun for you. Again, gonna have a little bit of a teaser of a video coming up about this here Z Flip 3 and some things that have happened to it that I want to talk to you about. But anyway, thank you so much for being here, folks. If you are still here, you want to check out JasonTLewis.com for more stuff. You want to check out the subscribe button, the like, the bell notification, all those kinds of things. Once again, thank you so much. My name is Jason T. Lewis. This is Painfully Honest Story Time. Until the next time, I'm out. I hate to do this because I know what kind of situation it's going to bring up in the comments, but I'm going to say it because it's true.